What is the Oxford Group? The largest Brazilian consulting company in the United States for over 40 years presents Economy in You. A presentation by Leib Ferreira Araújo Law. 3 decades of experience in immigration in the United States.
Good evening, dear listeners. Today we once again have an extremely interesting program, Brazil, exporting technology to the world as a whole and to the United States in particular. We will have the pleasure of addressing 2 topics in the same program. First, the Brazilian expertise in being able to export a unique technology to the rest of the world. And second, to find out what this technology is about, how Brazil managed to find a solution that represents extraordinary value for the economy of each country. For this, we will have here on our program André Cavalcanti, a Brazilian entrepreneur and visionary, who managed to develop the internationalization of a huge range of companies. And we're going to try to get some secrets out of him about how you create a successful program for the internationalization of Brazilian companies. André, thank you very much for being on our program.
Hello, Carlos. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It is a great pleasure and an honor to be part of your program, to be able to share here whatever information is possible that we have at our disposal for your listeners.
André, I'll start with you. You are someone, if I'm not mistaken, from Pernambuco, and you've built an international career. What made you, André, leave a leading state in the Northeast and become an international figure? What inspired you to do that? Was it?
Look, I believe this is a challenge. And who is an entrepreneur in Brazil who understands that it's possible with what we've learned in our own market to replicate it in other types of markets? When you understand a bit about the variations in our market, about the effort that entrepreneurs need to make in the Brazilian market to succeed, then you start to realize that your abilities can also be applied in other markets. So that's a motivation, along with the experience gained over more than 30 years. Being an entrepreneur in the Brazilian market motivated me to seek out the international market, especially at first in Europe.
André, you're absolutely right. When I lived in Brazil, I had the pleasure and honor of being a consultant for several companies. Among them, one company that still exists in the market today is called Tetra Pak. And the president of Tetra Pak said the following to me: if an entrepreneur can make it in Brazil, he can make it anywhere in the world, as long as he has the humility to want to learn and understand how things work there. Because there is no greater challenge than Brazil. But at the same time, humility is not the main characteristic. It's a characteristic of successful people in Brazil. I make a point of mentioning his name, as he was a great work partner, Nelson Fides. So let's get to the case we're going to discuss today. There is a level of metal corrosion. This has an economic significance. What is the economic significance of this corrosion that happens all over the world in all products?
Solid metal, let's go, right? Look at what we have here. 2 paths to follow. First, the economic impact, which is our focus here. Speaking of economics, we are talking here, according to data from various institutions, including American studies, about 3.4% of the world GDP. By 2025, this amounts to $3.93 trillion spent directly on corrosion, which represents 3.4% of the world GDP. When we take a moment to consider the broader environmental aspects, it is important to note that roughly 30% of all the steel produced worldwide is used specifically to replace parts that have been damaged by corrosion. So we also have a truly massive figure to look at here. Just within the American domestic market alone, this represents an annual economic cost of around $21 billion every single year. And that is just for the metal components themselves. I'm not talking about labor, I'm not talking about time, I'm not talking about downtime, just the metal. So these are gigantic numbers. It's a huge market and a market that has been stagnant in terms of innovation. There's nothing new, or at least nothing really new. In the corrosion market, that's the universe, that's the sea we're navigating.
Wow, that's impressive. So you're saying that almost 4% of the world's GDP is being corroded every year by rust. And this applies to areas that are important for safety, like bridges and overpasses, as well as key sectors of the economy. Within every company, there isn't a single one that doesn't have some metal being eaten away by rust. So given this specific scenario in Brazil, Andre, I'm curious to know, what is the current level of public awareness and the overall level of recognition that Brazil truly has regarding this persistent corrosion that is, in some way, continuously eroding the valuable physical assets of the nation, both the public and private sectors?
Brazil, as we discussed in our first conversation, faces major challenges here. But with the increasing presence of an international organizational culture, many companies, large national and international firms that operate here or have some international DNA, have an unavoidable perspective. Corrosion needs to be tackled in some way. Either you use traditional methods like treating, painting, replacing, sanding, or cathodic protection for what is buried underground, or you look for new technologies. And that's where aggressiveness comes in. These are new technologies. Today, the market is starting to open up more quickly. The Brazilian market is becoming more concerned with prevention. Until not long ago, the focus was on correction. So break and fix, break and fix. Carlos, as a reference, since we're talking about numbers here, look at how much it varies. In the American market, the GDP spent directly on corrosion is 3.1%. However, if you take into account stoppages, loss of productivity, production delays in industry, especially in industry and agribusiness, if you consider all of that, it reaches almost 6%. We call these indirect costs. These are costs that are not tangible. They're not those initial costs that are right in front of your eyes. We try to explain this to the domestic market. In Brazil's case, that the cost of corrosion, of painting and sanding is 15%. 85% is like an iceberg. It's below the waterline. So this cost is where this work advances. It's in the integrity of the metal. So we're talking about numbers that are enormous, that directly impact the economy of companies and the market wherever there is development and wherever metallic structures are used.
Let's go back a little bit. Not all of our listeners are familiar with, they're not all engineers or chemists who understand this, but everyone is directly involved with the economy and the development of their company. How does where this rust actually happen? And why does it happen?
Well, corrosion occurs due to several factors, especially the environment. But in our case, our technology acts on one of the main factors of corrosion, which is the potential imbalance that exists in the metallic alloy used commercially. The metal is extracted from nature and goes through the steel-making process. Several elements are added to the production line. Many people won't go into detail, as is the case here, but just to give some context, and it is transformed into the commercial alloy that we know. When it becomes this commercial alloy, it is a natural donor of electrons to the environment. And this is the beginning of the main corrosion process that we have identified. We work precisely on balancing this environmental structure, which until recently, some time ago, it was very difficult to do this without the use of technology, because there were no electronic components developed or capable enough to provide us with the information needed to achieve this potential balance in metallic structures. The main factors, besides this one, that impact the speed of this corrosion are environmental. And we're not just talking about the environment itself. Celine, okay? A lot of people think, oh, I'm by the beach and here by the sea, I have a corrosion problem. But if I'm in the middle of the country, I won't have it. It depends. If we're talking about a house or residence, that's fine. But when we talk about industry, it's a completely different story. Because in industry, we have several factors, and not just in industry. We provide protection even in the middle of Brazil, for example, which is a fantastic country to talk about the environment. Here we have all types of environmental variations, from dry to humid, from hot to cold, from high to low. So in the middle of the country, for example, the roof of an Olympic swimming pool, it releases chemicals that will attack the metal structure, even though it's in the middle of the country. And that's not even counting industry and dealing with various factors that make that environment aggressive. In agribusiness as well, we are very active. We have several clients, including American companies that are in Brazil in the fertilizer sector, who are not by the beach. They're far from the sea, but they still suffer a lot because of the production process, because of the raw materials, and all of this influences corrosion. That's why industry suffers so much from corrosion. Metal is still the most viable means of production in the world. From a mining industry to a paper factory or even a packaging factory like Tetra Pak, which you mentioned. So the machines are made of metal. The factory structure is made of metal. Transportation is done by metal vehicles. So all of this is possible. It is susceptible to corrosion, and that's where Granostress can act, helping to slow down the rate of this corrosion.
So actually, for us to better understand, the innovative technology that you have developed was designed with the primary goal of significantly reducing the time it takes for corrosion to occur, thereby substantially increasing material resistance. Go into a bit more detail. How does this process work? This ultimately results in saving a very significant portion of the ongoing maintenance cost for this specific type of metal material.
Our technology works by reducing the rate of corrosion. Carbon steel has a certain rate, and we are able to make it so that at the very least this time or this usage is divided by 3. So I will increase it. I will double or even more the time before I need to do that maintenance. If I do maintenance every year, I'll do it every 2.5, 3 years. If I used to do it every 6 months, now I'll do it every 12 or 18 months. So I increase the lifespan of this metal structure. We have cases where it lasts much longer than that, but to be conservative, we operate within this range. That's always our baseline. What do I mean by baseline? That's the minimum result we're able to deliver. We're able to deliver more than that. In other words, much more than triple or even 5 times the lifespan of the structure. And that's what we do. By acting on the potential imbalance of the metal structure with our technology, the technology we developed, which is national, patented, and Brazilian, we are able to ensure that the electronic equipment connected 24 hours a day and in contact with the client structure can do its job so that the speed of corrosion is reduced. That is what we deliver above all.
So the main savings in terms of value is the fact that you not just postpone, you actually reduce the speed, the need for maintenance. I understood that quite well 2 or 3 times. Wonderful. And what is the difference then? Why is this value so significant, considering that, of course, as you mentioned, traditionally we just sand it a little, dust off the product and give it a coat of paint, right? Then you get into other important environmental factors, because obviously you're using a chemical procedure which is aggressive to the environment, and in your case you also use chemical components. How is this technological magic done, avoiding, if it does avoid, the use of chemical components?
Our protection is thank you. We call it 100% ecologically correct and sustainable. Our technology uses the inherent energy of the metal itself. We don't use any kind of chemical product. We don't apply any chemical product to the metal surface. And we don't use high energy loads. The energy consumption to operate is very low. Our technology consumes very little energy. If we're going to carry this out here, to give an example, a tower with a seal standing 40 meters tall will consume about 46 watts. So it's like a 16-watt light bulb running 24 hours a day. That's what our anti-corrosion unit consumes. The anti-corrosion units do their job also helping because 30% of the metal comes from nature and is lost to the corrosion that's occurring. our technology will increase the interval between maintenance or the interval between failures. So I'll need to paint a little less, sand a little less, I'll use less material. Remnants of metal structure maintenance in the environment. I will pollute less. But the most important thing, and we always say this, besides the environmental aspect, which is fundamental for our survival as a whole, are the indirect costs. Because I mentioned that it raises the American GDP, for example, from 3.5% to 6% due to maintenance costs. These are the indirect costs, which include downtime and the replacement of the entire metal structure. 15% of what is spent on maintenance is for paint and sanding. It's sanding paint. In the 1980s, what really mattered was replacing the structure. With our technology, if the aesthetic aspect is important, paint will still be used. But if the aesthetic aspect is not important, you can use our technology and it will have a steel-like appearance. That layer, called the passivating layer, is exposed to the environment and separates the metal from its surroundings. But the integrity of the metal is preserved. The physical body of the metal remains intact. So this is the goal of our solution. We are able to make an economic impact by reducing costs and also benefit the environment. By discarding fewer products into the environment, generating less maintenance waste, and consuming less metal to replace the structure. Corroded structure.
Taking into account what you told us at the beginning, there are savings. These savings come from the sum of all these factors. There are the costs you would have for maintenance and the costs for replacement. Is that right? That's right.
The financial calculation each person can do within their own market. But taking into consideration everything we've discussed here, there is a financial cost and an environmental cost. So the financial cost needs to be calculated. The cost of painting, maintenance, plain and simple. The cost of downtime for maintenance, which I will increase. If I'm going to stop that machine for maintenance every year, I'll stop it every 2 years instead. So it will be available for production. And this isn't just, Carlos, for an industrial machine. Just imagine a water distribution system, for example. We have several cities here in our country that are protected by our technology, but even a reservoir in a simple condominium, a housing complex supplied by a local water distributor's reservoir. Shutting down that metal reservoir to perform maintenance due to corrosion will take at least 30 days. That means 30 days in that community without a normal water supply. They'll have to use trucks and use some other method, either bringing in water to make a detour or setting up a temporary reservoir. Just think about the cost of that. That's what we call the intangible cost. Each user, each client is the one who can calculate that cost. We can't do it ourselves, but we can show them that we're going to impact the list within a year. And then each of them will start to calculate that for themselves.
Fantastic. So the technology you developed there in Brazil, is it unique or does it have competition abroad? Traditional technology is to scrape, sand, and paint. Is there anything similar, comparable, or identical on the market? Or did Brazil create something that makes us proud to say, well, we're ahead or we're the only ones?
No, there isn't. We did very strong legal work worldwide through WIPO, the International Community for Telephone Procurement. In Brazil and in Europe, our company is Brazilian, but also Portuguese-Brazilian. Our headquarters are here, and we did very serious and thorough work regarding any similar patents or anything alike, and nothing approved was found. So our patent is truly unique. It is patented, our technology is patented, and we don't have. What exists that is similar to our final product is cathodic protection. However, cathodic protection is the most widely used, extensively used in structures that are buried or submerged or in ship hulls. The difference is that our protection can also safeguard what is buried, that is underground, submerged, or underwater. And most importantly, it can protect what cathodic protection cannot, which is what is exposed to the atmosphere. This is our key differentiator. There is also the matter of costs, but that's something to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. Our technology tends to be much cheaper, but that's just market competition. When I compete with cathodic protection, I can go head to head to protect, for example, a pipeline that's buried underground. But when it comes to what's in the atmosphere, in other words, exposed to the environment, only Rustless is able to protect it. Currently, it's the only technology available in the world.
I'll ask you for 15 seconds for our commercial break, and we'll be right back.
For over 20 years, the Lee Ferreira de Araujo office has been providing quality services and customized solutions for professionals, entrepreneurs, and investors coming to the United States. They also represent with excellence companies employing foreigners on a temporary or permanent basis. We understand that each client's case is unique and requires a specific approach. We maintain clear and objective communication with our clients. Get in touch to find out more.
My listeners, we're back here with André Cavalcanti, giving us a lesson, a masterclass on a technology that has been implemented, was created, and is unique in the world, and of course in Brazil. André, where has this technology already been proven to work? In Brazil, of course, give us a sense of scale. And what about the rest of the world?
Yes, in Brazil, where we were born, and we are very proud of that. And also in Portugal, where we started almost at the same time. We have some installations, including ones in the United States around 2017, more or less. But at that time, we were granted a special permit for that project. So we have installations in Brazil in various sectors, including the Brazilian Navy. Wow, yes, we do. On vessels as well, and not just for the Navy, we work with this technology for them. In Portugal, we have several installations that are being protected with this technology in various markets, also in Africa and other European countries that we are already serving: Italy, Spain, Finland. So we have installations in Mexico, Peru, Paraguay, Salve, Ghana, Peru, Chile, Mexico, I think Canada as well. In short, we have some installations around the world, several clients. We have more than 420 active clients with our installations operating right now at this moment, a huge variety of clients. We have always managed to enter the market by focusing on B2B. We have no expertise in serving the retail market, that is, the small consumer. We don't have the expertise, nor are we in a position to serve them. We always focus on large industries, major consumers, ports, from ports to airport structures as well, speaking of mobility and some large-scale agricultural machinery. We work with vessels, industries, and water treatment areas, several water treatment companies, from reservoirs to treatment areas and waste treatment areas. Also the pulp industry, and within the industry, it varies a lot. Pulp industry, ceramics industry, fertilizer industry, which suffers quite a bit, petrochemical industry. In short, there is a huge range of clients there. Food industry, cleaning products companies like Unilever, for example. So we have an endless number of clients at all levels who especially suffer, and above all, those who suffer and spend a lot due to corrosion.
You mentioned at the beginning of the program that, of course, every situation is different, and sometimes the company, the machine, or the industry is located in the center of a country, far from the sea. And there are other places, like here at the port, where we have a warehouse that stores salt. So when I talk about corrosion, it's right next door. Is there any essential difference in the advantage of using this product in areas of high maintenance needs? And in the center, or is the percentage of the advantage always the same?
Yes, there is a variation, but as I mentioned, our baseline or the minimum we deliver is double the service life. So if the environment is extremely aggressive, and I'll give you an example. As I said, Brazil is a great laboratory for corrosion. Corrosion here is remarkable. We have one of the beaches that is considered one of the saltiest in the world, called Praia do Futuro in the state of Ceará. We protected an amusement park there, a water park that sits right on the sand of the beach, facing the sea, almost inside the
water.
And the water ride uses chlorinated water. So the rate of corrosion on this ride is enormous. It's a metal structure. It's not, look, they have several wooden rides, but this one being a metal structure, there's nothing you can do except sand and paint it. It just won't last 2 years. So when we say that we at least double the lifespan, we're already taking these highly aggressive environments into account. But so far, we've already achieved much more than double, even in these highly aggressive environments. More than salt, salt is aggressive. But fertilizer is even more aggressive. We have countless case studies in this regard. Because fertilizer causes chemical corrosion and creates a much more aggressive environment. So yes, we are able to achieve that. The same result, the same percentages, though lower, of course, than in a structure like, for example, in Breyer, which is just a shed, a metal warehouse. So this type of protection is a protection that will deliver results in line with or according to the wear and tear that the client is already aware of. A warehouse structure that stores food, whether it's grain or anything else, that doesn't have any aggressive impact on the environment, only requires periodic maintenance every 5 or 6 years. In the case of salt, maintenance should be done every year. If not, the structure will be lost. More than just maintaining it. There's also that aspect. Sometimes the client prefers to let it deteriorate completely so they can tear it down and build it again. What we do is exactly that. We extend the lifespan of this structure. For this case with salt, for example, it would be fantastic. We could use Rustless Technology to protect this warehouse, which deteriorates quickly. And they would quickly notice a reduction in metal consumption.
Well, wonderful. In these cases, then, how do you calculate the value of the product? Is it based on the level of usage, or does the buyer of the technology purchase it according to the economic advantage of using the technology? How does this commercialization work?
No, that's something we always pay attention to, especially for the sake of global uniformity and global pricing. Our price is based on cost. Our costs are calculated according to the client's structure, not the value of the asset, but what is spent to carry out our installation. And our technology, our commercial strategy, we have only 2 ways of doing it. The main one is leasing, and the second is selling. Leasing is important, and we always prioritize leasing. I don't just want to sell and walk away. We provide a service to the client. I'm there with them. I have a support service in place. My technical team is constantly present at these major clients we serve. So it's common to see a Rosters team in uniform inspecting, taking photos of some structure, whether it's protected or not, preparing reports and sending them to the maintenance team. Not only the structures protected by the technology, but others as well, but mainly those that are covered by the technology. We've already realized that in the industry, for example, there might be a silo or a bucket elevator which has a lightning rod antenna at the top. Then the lightning rod company comes in, removes an anchoring point that provides anti-corrosive protection, or disconnects our control panel. What happens then? It won't work. If I came, requested it, and left, they'll turn off the control panel and it won't work. We are there all the time. If that happens, we will know, we'll receive a remote alert, we'll go there, the team will go, check it out, fix it, repair it, and leave the client ready. In the sale, even during the sale, the client is required upon purchase. We include 1 year of follow-up. So even after buying, they will have a year of technical visits from our team every 3 or 4 months to keep everything running and properly set up, close to what is necessary. After this period, usually the few who chose to buy usually end up hiring us later. When you use CAPEX, not OPEX, right? This issue is also about using CAPEX. Here, I won't use it. There's no OPEX, so I'll use my CAPEX, and then later comes the hiring. This happened a lot in Europe, right when we opened the European market, especially because the Portuguese don't have the habit of renting like Brazilians do. While Italians see this solution very favorably, we rent to Italy easily, just as I think it will be in the American market and as it is in Brazil and other countries. But there in Porto, we have to sell. After a year, people said, let's do maintenance. Now I'm going to make a little maintenance contract, then we'll follow up.
And now a question about the United States. Why in this process did you choose? You chose to develop Europe, which is undoubtedly a tough market, Africa, which is a complicated market, Brazil, which is as well, and not the United States. What's the reason for you to disregard us as Americans?
On the contrary, actually, Carlos, it's out of respect for the American market. In my professional opinion, I believe we needed to be significantly more established and well recognized, and to be considerably more robust and resilient in order to meticulously organize and prepare the entire company structure to properly serve the American market. What I was saying here, when we started our internationalization in 2019, 2020, I said, we're going to internationalize, let's go to Portugal, let's go to Europe, because in Europe I can manage, I can open the floodgates. I'm Portuguese, I only serve Portugal. I'm going to Spain. First I went to Spain, after Portugal, let's go to Spain. So now we have Spain, okay. Facilities in Spain, okay. Now let's go to Italy. So we're in Italy. Let's go to Finland first, then Italy. And then why? I can keep adapting and most importantly, understanding how the markets change, because each country, Europe, even though it's the European Union, that's just the name. Each country has its own part. Within the same country, there's a huge variation in the consumer market. So we started learning, the company started learning from this in order to gain knowledge and build strength to be able to serve the largest consumer market in the world, which is the American market. So it was no longer out of fear. It wasn't out of defiance and it wasn't out of disdain. Rather, it was about preparing ourselves thoroughly so that we wouldn't leave or be kicked out like unprepared amateurs. So let's learn from the world, gather information. Technically, my partner, who is the creator of the technology, Jefferson Tasica, shout out to him. He was very concerned about this issue of variation in installations, the particularities of the construction world, the particularities of materials that are used in installations, which also vary a lot. All of this we are learning to handle. Africa is a school of its own, but Europe is also something that has taught us a lot. And I think now we are ready for the American market.
Wonderful, Andre. Why would you stop? What advice, based on your experience, would you give to Brazilian entrepreneurs who want to internationalize? And the second question, which you can answer next, okay? How do you plan to take on this American challenge?
The person who needs to understand the right moment for internationalization is the entrepreneur themselves. I think preparation is very important. It's important to seek support from some organizations we have in Brazil, like Apex and Fonsex, which are institutions that really help you understand the market a bit, to study the market you're entering thoroughly, to understand the cost in that market. The tax issue isn't easy, but in Brazil, taxes change daily, so that's not a problem. You'll figure it out. So that's what I say this to everyone who wants to internationalize their business. Understand whether the consumer market is attractive, whether that market will consume your product or not. Now, sometimes we have an advantage. The countries we enter have industry, so we know that at least the industry will hire us. And regarding the American market, the second question, Carlos, as I mentioned just now, there is a lot of respect for the American market. It's a big challenge personally for me and for Jefferson, my partner, is that we have this challenge ahead of us to understand and embrace the American market. And everything I mentioned, all that homework, we did it. But like in an exam, we go in with an open heart, with the knowledge we have. If something is missing, we'll seek help. But with humility, that is a fundamental and crucial point so that the business can succeed. Humility, first and foremost, God above all. Then humility so that we can sit here and listen to what the market has to tell us. So that's what we're going to do in the American market, just as we have done in all the others. We hope to achieve the same results, the same success that we have been able to reap in the other markets. But for us, it's a great challenge, but also a great honor. And to understand, or at least to see ourselves as prepared for the American market.
Wonderful, Angelo. Thank you very much for your time and for your explanation. An example of an entrepreneur who at the same time is extremely cautious, as we have seen, and aggressive. I mean, this is a very important duality, especially because we can see here that really for the United States, you need everything you mentioned, and in addition, humility. That's what has often caused companies that come here to fail. Congratulations. Thank you for your time, and best of luck with your entry into the American market. We are certain that with your caution, your aggressiveness, and your humility, you are destined for success. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. It was a pleasure, and all the best to everyone.
Well, gentlemen, today we had the opportunity to talk with an entrepreneur who is both cautious and aggressive. It is a fantastic quality to be able to combine these two characteristics when going international. We hope we have been helpful to you as an example, as a perspective, and especially for those who lack faith, to see that there truly is a huge opportunity for your company to go international as long as you follow the necessary caution and boldness. Good night to you all. And next Tuesday, we will be together again with another very interesting program for your knowledge, for all of you who need and want to internationalize your company. Have a good night.